You are now listening to the Paul McGUIRE Report. I'm Paul McGUIRE. Okay, on today's program we're going to do a flashback and take us to the present moment. Now. N-O-W. Now, like right now. Right now, the present. So behind me is some research I was doing 14 plus years ago. I was standing in front of the United Nations on the east side of Manhattan. You can see the UN flags in the background, and you can see part of the structure, the giant structure behind me. And I'm talking about the UN plan for a global government, the UN plan for a one world economic system, and a world economic government, the merging of government, economics, and yes, spirituality and religion. I'm talking about it on the streets of Manhattan. And later on in this, and by the way, you can watch this on my YouTube channel. Be careful what you hit because a lot of it's censored. So if you play it, once it plays, it gets censored. It gets pulled out of the system. It's a very, very strange thing, but I got to live with it because the price of telling truth is you know what. Okay, so I have been talking about this, and on this videotape, shot live on the streets of Manhattan, there's also coming up in this, not necessarily in this program, but coming up on this footage behind me, this video footage behind me, you'll see me standing out in front of the Council on Foreign Relations. And that was a wild shoot, but I'll describe that more when that part of the video comes up. As you know, July 4th, 2025, I had, and I really am reluctant to even say this, okay, because I don't like what I perceive as the kind of cheap glamour that seems to be accrued by some who think that if they, and I'm not judging their hearts because I don't know what's inside their head or their hearts. And I'm not saying that everybody is like this. Please understand me. I believe that God speaks to us today in the now, if you will. God speaks to us today through people who have prophetic gifts, the gift of prophecy. I don't believe that there are prophets today that are on the same level as, let's say, Ezekiel or Daniel or Jeremiah and so on and so forth. Because the Old Testament, the children of Israel's standard given by God to his people was that if a prophet is raised up among them and he's telling them what to do or what's going to happen in the future, if that prophet is wrong even once, pow, that prophet can no longer prophesy. And in fact, according to the law of God in the Old Testament, that prophet was then supposed to be considered a false prophet. Just one mistake publicly and you were considered a false prophet, and then your life was taken. You were executed. Okay, we've got a lot to talk about, and I'm Paul McGUIRE. You're listening to the Paul McGUIRE Report. Behind me is some video footage I shot live on the streets of Manhattan, New York City, about 14 years ago. I'm standing in front of the UN, and I'm talking about the UN's plan for a global government, how this is planned and empowered by organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations. And in the video clip behind me, you can see me in a green shirt. In the video clip behind me, further on, during this same shoot, or earlier actually, I'm standing in front of the Council on Foreign Relations itself, and I'm giving an explanation about what the Council on Foreign Relations really is, right in front, a few feet in front of the Council on Foreign Relations, the main doorway. And to share with you, like a behind-the-scenes flashback, if you will, I'm not going to name his name per se, but the person who was about, 4 feet from me and staring at me the whole time and listening intently to what I had to say. And my supposition was, because back then I was doing a whole lot of Fox News Network shows, and that had been going on for 10 years. and I was doing the Fox Business Channel on the biggest shows. I was doing like a O'Reilly's show. I was doing a lot of other big shows on the Fox News Network. So a lot of people would recognize me all over the place, all over the United States, all over the world. I ran into people in Israel. So this guy knew who I was, and he was one of the most powerful men in the world. He was the head of the financial system of the United States. And he has a title, but if I give away the title, I'll give away who he is. So he was one of the most powerful men in the nation, and his job was to control and manage our entire monetary system. That's how powerful he was. So he was sitting there listening to me intently as I unpacked I did it in hopefully eloquent, intelligent, rational, and documented facts basis, because he stayed with me, which surprised me. Usually these guys won't even look at you. He knew, this powerful man, he knew who I was. He recognized me. That's why he hung out there. And I knew who he was, and we both knew that each of us knew who the other was. So there was kind of a comfort zone established. And he was, a cordial guy. He wasn't some kind of really weird guy. He was a cordial guy. No sense of, no sense of weirdness about him. So anyway, I explained the Federal Reserve System, the United Nations, and of course I'm standing a few feet from the doorway of the Council on Foreign Relations. It's a very inconspicuous doorway. They own the building. You can't see visible security, but believe me, visible security is all over the place. It's just stealth. It's hidden. And obviously, this guy, he was just coming from a meeting in the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations. And the reason he stayed with me is a comfort zone was established, and he figured I was worth listening to simply because he saw me on Fox all the time. Otherwise a guy like that wouldn't give me 5 seconds of his time. And he must have liked what he saw, or because he felt comfortable. And I didn't feel any like weird vibes from him or whatever. But I tried to approach it as if I was talking to somebody I knew. Maybe a friend or a coworker or something like that. I tried to approach my discourse, if you will, in that manner, so that I could hopefully and prayerfully pull him in and expose him. And here's the strange thing, and you'll know what I mean in just a moment. I hoped I could bring him in and expose him to truths that he may not have fully been presented with, or at least he may not know the deeper truths. And you say, well, how can a guy that powerful be so disconnected from the truth? Well, you have to remember, the world system that we live in is a system. It's an economic system on one level, a political system on another level, and a spiritual system on another level. But the name of the game, and this goes back to century after century after century, thousands and thousands of years back in time, the operating instructions were always the same as it is today. You know the facts and the truth about any given situation on what the military or the intelligence agencies refer to as a need-to-know basis. So only if you need to know do you receive certain classified information. The other thing is information, truth, true truth, and the way things really are is highly, highly compartmentalized. So what that means is that even the people on the highest levels of the elite class, which this man definitely was, I guarantee you that whatever degree he is, he's really high up there, okay? Very high up there. But even at that level, it is my estimation that the information, the data, is compartmentalized. Now, behind me right now, we've switched, and now you see me in the gray black shirt. That's the Council on Foreign Relations right there, okay? I'm standing here. When I was shooting with him there, I was standing right behind my arm, and over here, this way, is the doorway, the entrance into the Council on Foreign Relations. So we stood there initially. People complain that the audio on this is hard to listen to. Yeah, it is hard to listen to. Guess what? Truth is hard to find. It's hard to listen to because the taxi cabs and the roar of the taxi cab engines are everywhere. And notice when you look down, you will see so many inconspicuous looking cars, especially old Ford blue vans that look deteriorated, and there's no windows in them except the window for the driver to see. They're totally, the window area is totally black, and they're old beat up vans. Now you got to ask yourself, why would there be a whole bunch of old beat up vans in front of the Council on Foreign Relations? Because they believe in a soft approach to what they're doing. They don't want to announce, oh, here we are, the most powerful people in the world, blah, 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 blah. They don't have security guards running everywhere. You wouldn't know the level of security that is embedded where I was. It's very high level. And so in these older cars that you see that are run down, parked, and blue vans and old vans, they're all old. I believe in those vans were security teams monitoring the building electronically. You say, well, why would you assume that? Because you don't have an open door policy into a building that makes history every single day it's open. A global hierarchy that's going in and out of the building. A Rockefeller project named the Council on Foreign Relations. You don't have that level and make it completely vulnerable. It's just that you're not average. You don't want to make a big show that something important is going on here, so you very intelligently, you underplay it. But in reality, something really heavy is going on there. So he listened to me, and I suspect the reason that he listened to me was not because he was even remotely enamored with the fact that he was watching me regularly on Fox News Network, Fox Business Channel, and CNN back in their golden days. He was not enamored with me at all. He's a big shot that hangs out with big shots. I think I intrigued him. I think he saw me on a regular basis, and I developed a credibility in his eyes, as I did with many of the viewers. And so it was on the basis of that credibility that he listened to me. In other words, these were kind of, I'm sure they were kind of foreign concepts to him. He may even initially have perceived them as conspiracy theories. So why would he stay with a guy like me and listen for a long period of time on the streets of Manhattan in front of the CFR? Why would he do that? He would do that because he wouldn't do that if he thought I was just a nut job conspiracy theorist. He did that because he was already pre-sold that I was knowledgeable, had credibility, and obviously I had the endorsement of Fox News Network, Fox Business Channel, and was a regular guest on the biggest shows on CNN. This was again back in their golden days. So it was on the basis of that inherited, if you will, credibility that I think he stretched himself a bit and listened to literally the majority of my presentation, where I unpacked, I explained the real nature of the financial system and the real nature of the Federal Reserve System and the global financial system. And look, I don't want to even remotely put myself up on some kind of knowledge pedestal or intellectual pedestal of my own design. I'm not so deceived and enamored with myself where I think for a moment that, wow, I'm some kind of like enlightened guru, and the world's most powerful men listen to me. It's far more complicated than that. I am sure he knows a lot of what I said far better than I understand it, because he's on the inside. He's on the inside with the most powerful people in the world. And so I think why he stayed with me and listened intently to what I had to say is that he knows things, he knows people, he's been in meetings with the movers and shakers of planet Earth. But I think that I was able to feed him, let's say conservatively, because I want to be realistic about this, let's say 24% of my communication contained information or explanations that were like the missing pieces of a puzzle he was trying to put together. Again, I'm recognizing he's an extremely powerful individual associated with the most powerful individuals on planet Earth. And I don't deceive myself into thinking that I have some kind of superior knowledge next to him. No, he knows far more than I know. I'm sure of it. Because of his position and because of who he knows in terms of the elite and in terms of his job. But having said that, even on the upper tiers of elite power structures, everything's on a need-to-know basis. And even in elite power structures, information, truth, data, history, the real facts are, you get managed information, compartmentalized. So everybody has a different compartment. Only the very top people, and he's next to the very top people, but only the pinnacle top people have all the interconnected knowledge. And so when we talk to people and we try to bring them the truth, because that was my ultimate goal, I just didn't present economic facts and historical facts. I also presented in a strategic fashion because I knew who I was talking to and I didn't want to lose the privilege of being able to communicate to him. I communicated to him as best I could in a strategic methodology where I presented the deeper facts of things he probably knew, but I explained perhaps all the missing files. I'm speaking symbolically. I explained perhaps all the missing files of truth and data that an individual like him would need to know if deep inside he was really searching for the truth. And I may have caught him on, let's call it a God-ordained day, where for some reason he was living in a spiritual zone and a mental zone where he was, at that day when I met him and he listened to me, it's my impression that at that day he was really open and vulnerable. You know how we're all open to the truth on certain days, but if you catch us or others on the wrong day, you're likely to encounter a brick wall or a cement wall. So he was open. There was no question about it. He was open. And so my intent was to subtly, not sneakily, but subtly layer my discourse with intelligent biblical truth, because my game plan was not just to provide light in the economic arena, but my game plan was to provide light that would lead him to an acknowledgement and an understanding that there is an infinite personal living God of the universe. And I believe that's what he was hungry for. But he wasn't going to take it from some Bozo the Clown message. It had to be credible, intellectual, factual, and documented. So, before I dive back into this, examine your life. When you supposedly bump into anybody, and the person could be somebody whose power level or whatever is minuscule. That doesn't matter whether their power level is minuscule or astronomical, which was the case with this guy. The point is that we have to begin by faith to see that many times it is God who is prearranged for us to so-called bump into people or encounter people or to be in a particular place at a particular time. It's not merely odds or luck or coincidence. If you are a true believer in Jesus Christ, it is the unfolding of the divine plan of God in your life. So I walk in that kind of reality all the time. I recognize the fact, and I've trained myself, I've worked on it, to be sensitive to the fact that God prearranges these so-called chance meetings. So I knew, and the person with me who was the cameraman, they knew too. I knew that the gentleman that was looking at me was hanging around to hear what I had to say, because he recognized me. And you see the Council on Foreign Relations. See how nondescript it is? There's no big sign saying Council on Foreign Relations. It's discreet. The most powerful people in the world don't go around advertising their power. They're subtle. Okay, so I believe that God arranged for me to make the presentation that I was already going to make in front of the Council on Foreign Relations, because lots of people on the internet all over the world will watch it. I knew that I had to give a message of explanation, like who is the CFR? And so the CFR is essentially a think tank, very powerful think tank, founded by Rockefeller. It's known as the Council on Foreign Relations, and its end game is to create and bring forth a global government, a global financial system. And a guy like this is the caliber of person who would have been in line to be appointed as the head of the global financial system. No, he's not the false prophet, but I'm talking about a human being. Already his current position when he met me or was listening to me outside of the CFR building in Manhattan, already his title, which I'm not going to disclose, his title was one where he was already the head of the United States of America monetary system, the American financial system, and working hand in glove with the Federal Reserve System. So, a very powerful individual. So, we have to believe that God will supernaturally order our ways, and He will be behind these so-called chance encounters, which are not chance at all. And that's what I want to communicate with you. Also, as you watch this video, I need you to go to paulmcguire.us. That's paulmcguire.us. And we need you to partner with us. And by that I mean we need to communicate truth and light as fast as we can while the doors are still open in our nation and the world. So I need you to go to paulmcguire.us and look at what we're doing, look at what we're planning on doing, and then ask the Lord a simple question. Lord, what would you have me give or contribute to Paul McGUIRE Ministries, Paradise Mountain Church, and the Paul McGUIRE Report? What would you have me do in terms of a contribution? Because remember this, because we tell so much truth and give away the overwhelming majority of it for free, we don't get the flow of high-end advertisers. They're deliberately diverted from us. And I'm told daily, I get a letter from the major search engines like Google. And I'm glad I'm on Google now. I hope it stays there. I don't know how long this video will stay up, but I appreciate the opportunity. But I get all these letters from major search engine companies saying, well, your content, our advertisers wouldn't like your content, therefore we're not going to send the big bucks advertising dollar people to you to buy ads. Well, that sounds nice, but you see all the people who are reaching massive numbers of people and you see their face everywhere, they are being financed by the advertisers. So some of these newly appearing social media stars are bringing in like $100,000 plus every single month on their advertising dollars, because they only choose to do they play a game. They pretend and masquerade that they're telling the true truth, but in reality they're only communicating politically correct truth. And they put on a very good act about how conservative and Christian they are, but it's all sanitized stuff, so they get the big advertising dollars. Now, because I tackle in a respectful, intelligent, loving way, but because I communicate truth, well, let me give you an example. Since, if you go to like Fox News or social media and stuff, one of the biggest advertisers is the pharmaceutical industry. And the intended strategy, I've researched this, the intended strategy of the pharmaceutical industry is to do the following. They're spending a fortune. That's why whenever you turn on certain programs, you are bombarded with an endless cascade of pharmaceutical TV spots. Or if you go listen to certain so-called conservative social media stars, it'll be endless pharmaceutical ads. The pharmaceutical industry does this. Their primary intention is not to sell a particular prescription or a particular medicine to the audience. You would think that that's their number one focus. No, that's a side thing. By merely, when the pharmaceutical giants spend this level of hundreds of millions, perhaps billions of dollars total on their advertising campaigns, it's for this primary purpose. When you spend that massive amount of money on social media channels and search engines and Fox News and stuff like that, when you spend that massive amount of money 24/7, you have, without having to verbalize it, without having to ask for it, you have sent a message loud and clear to the owners and to the ad people and to the stars of social media and TV and stuff. You've sent a powerful message that you are their biggest advertiser, and the reason that they are individually prospering and financially flush and making hundreds of millions of dollars in profit, or expanding their social media shows, the reason all that's happening is because they are the recipients of a tsunami flood of endless, infinite advertising dollars being spent by the pharmaceutical industry. So once that happens, and it's already happened, once that happens, then nobody is going to, and they don't even have to discuss it openly. It's like an unspoken agreement. Once that happens, there's an unspoken agreement that goes into effect in that, I don't want to air this. Why am I airing this? Well, we'll stop it. You see how they sneak advertising? I don't get any money from that, by the way. Just so you know, I get nothing for that. I'm going to turn this off. See, I don't know what happened, but this is not what I wanted at all. So I'm going to turn it off, and we'll get back to it in a little bit. So the thing is, classic example, I don't receive a penny from that. The point is that, so when I get these letters saying, our advertisers, are not interested in advertising. These are my words, but that's what they're saying to me. Our advertisers are not interested in spending money on your program, because they use some tactful word because it's not a fit for them or whatever. Well, of course not. If your overwhelming majority of advertisers, if all the big money advertising that comes into your search engine or network or whatever, if it's all being paid for by the pharmaceutical companies, which it is, you don't even have to be told. You're not going to mess with that cash flow. Okay? You're not going to rock that cash flow. You're not going to rock the cash flow boat. So you're going to play the game. And so like people like me who are trying to speak the truth in love or truth to power, true truth tellers, we are punished financially. And the minute I want to start rolling in the dough, okay, you need to know this in light of when I ask you to prayerfully consider supporting us with your contributions, donations, etc. What you need to know is that we're demonetized, and if we speak too much truth, we're deplatformed, which is a fancy word for saying they pull the plug on us. And we're demonetized. I'm not receiving advertising dollars, which lots of people in social media are. I could be too, but what I would have to do is, in an unspoken way, stop covering like probably a huge percentage of the topics and subjects that we cover, because we have a moral and spiritual obligation to do that. So if people will not listen to the Lord and they will not independently give their donations and contributions, we don't have the search engine sugar daddies to keep us going and expanding, to the tune of an easy $25,000 a month, $100,000 a month, or $1 million a month in advertising. Look, I see some of these guys, okay? They've built beautiful studios, private jets, mansions. They're living the high life. I'm living a life that is one of struggle, but commitment to an eternal goal. So you got to understand that there's a legitimate reason why I have to ask you to contribute financially, and I need you to ask you to watch our back and make sure they're not rigging our numbers in terms of followers, likes on our various social media pages, and make sure you join our e-blast list and so on and so forth, and make sure you really pray for us, because this is a spiritual battle.